Big Train fans, welcome to Safe at Home Tuesdays on BigTrain.tv. I'm Bruce Adams, the founder and president of the Bethesda Big Train Baseball. Our topic today is the great humanitarian Roberto Clemente, and we are fortunate to have David Maraniss as our guest. David, the associate editor of the Washington Post, is the author of biographies of sports stars and presidents, including Clemente, the passion and grace of baseball's last hero. So, David, with a Pulitzer and a house full of journalism awards, biographies of Lombardi, Clinton, Obama, I assume publishers just line up to publish whatever you want to write about whomever. How did you decide to write about Roberto Clemente?
I wouldn't get carried away there, Bruce. I don't know if they're lining up, but I do have some freedom. And Clemente was a book that I always wanted to write. So once I had written some books about Bill Clinton and Vince Lombardi that did pretty well, I did have the freedom to say, okay, I'm going to write 2 books, one on Vietnam and one on Roberto Clemente. And it was the second of a 2-book package. And the publisher, Simon & Schuster, was happy to let me do it. Clemente, you know, I grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up with the Milwaukee Braves, that fabulous team of Hank Aaron and Warren Spahn and Billy Bruton. But my favorite player was Roberto Clemente from a pretty early age. There was just something about him that I thought was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You know, the way he walked, the way he threw the ball, everything about him, even the fact that he was considered a hypochondriac. And he really wasn't, but I am. And so I could identify with him in that way. You know, I think every kid has someone, a writer, an artist, a musician, or an athlete that you just find sort of a soulful connection to that's ineffable. You can't quite explain it, but that was Clemente for me. So, and this was before I knew not just what a cool baseball player he was, but what a fabulous human being he was. So once, you know, I was an adult and knew that combination, this is a book I've got to write.
That's great. So take us back. He's born in 1934. He's the youngest of 7 kids. His dad is working in the sugarcane fields of Puerto Rico. What was the life of the young Roberto Clemente?
Well, you know, 1934, it was in the middle of the Depression. His family was large and loving, but not poor, certainly not rich. They lived in a 5-room house where the kids, most of them slept on the floor in the same room. His father was a supervisor, you know, at a sugarcane field. Sugar was still a big crop in industry in Puerto Rico then. Roberto was, of his family, sort of the quietest, the most pensive. He never wanted to be rushed, so whenever his siblings were talking to him, he'd always say, "Momentito, momentito, wait a minute." And from that came his nickname, which was Momen. One thing he loved was baseball. And it's funny, you know, when you look at great athletes, sometimes the sons of great athletes don't perform as well as the fathers did. And if they do, it's usually because of the mother. And in this case, Roberto always said that it was his mother, Luisa, who had the great arm, and he inherited that from her. But he, you know, they didn't have baseballs. They'd play what they called baseball with a broomstick and maybe a bottle cap or a sock. And he was always throwing something against the wall, testing his arm from a fairly early age. He grew up in the barrio of San Antonio in Carolina, which is sort of on the outskirts of San Juan, the capital of Puerto Rico. And Roberto would take a bus into town to watch baseball. So it was his passion from a fairly early age.
So then he gets older and he starts to play. What is baseball like in Puerto Rico in the 50s?
Along with boxing and horse racing and, oddly enough, volleyball, baseball was really the sport. And It had a fabulous winter league, the Puerto Rican Winter League. And that's really, Clemente started playing softball, and then he started playing hardball. He was recruited because he was so great. But he would take the bus down to watch the San Juan Senadores or the Santurce Congrejeros, which I sort of liken to the Yankees and Dodgers.
Right.
The Senadores were the elite team in the city, and they were the Yankees. The Congrejeros was a team that the people rooted for, and they were sort of in a working class part of town. It turns out that Clemente played for both of those teams at various points. But he would go down and watch them play, and a lot of African-American, American blacks, many of whom had played in the Negro Leagues before, played in Puerto Rico, where there was not the same Jim Crow segregation and color line. His favorite player was Monty Irvin, the great New York Giant and former Negro Leaguer. And I got to interview Monty for this book up in Cooperstown, actually, at the Hall of Fame that weekend. He was up there signing autographs and hanging out. And he said, yeah, I taught Roberto everything he knew. Of course, he soon surpassed me.
That's great. So the Dodgers signed him in '54. How does he become a Pittsburgh Pirate?
Well, the Dodgers signed him, but they tried to hide him.
Right.
They sent him up to Montreal. It was a team that had very good young players, including Sandy Koufax. They were not on the Dodgers yet, but about to, going on to the Dodgers that year. But anyway, they wanted to hide Clemente, and the manager up for the Montreal Royals was actually under orders not to play him. So he wasn't kept on the 40-man roster. But the Pittsburgh Pirates, the lowly Pirates, last place Pirates, their general manager was none other than Branch Rickey, right. Who had been the GM for the Dodgers, who hired Jackie Robinson. And he and a couple of his scouts, Clyde Sukeforth, knew about Clemente. They'd already scouted him, and they stole him. So they took him off the Rule 5 wire and got him in 1955.
So April '55, it's just 7 years after Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier. Yeah. He's a Black Latino. He's speaking very little English. What was the discrimination and disrespect shown Clemente? What did he face? What was spring training in Fort Myers like?
A lot of Black ball players were already in the majors, starting with Jackie. Many of them came from the South or were familiar with segregation and discrimination and racism. Clemente was not so much. Puerto Rico, every culture has a certain amount of racism inherently, but it was not institutionalized in Puerto Rico. So he never faced that form of Jim Crow segregation that he did as soon as he got to Fort Myers in 1955, where the Black players did not stay at the hotel with the other players. They were shipped out to live on the other side of the tracks with Black families on Lime Street and that area of Fort Myers. The team had a welcome back party at the country club. Clemente was not invited. They would travel around Jim Crow, Florida to play spring training games. And Clemente, he did suffer both that sort of double negative of being Black and English as a second language. And he was an incredibly proud human being. And the whole system in Florida disturbed him greatly. And it was at a time when there was starting to be outspokenness about that segregation, led by writers for some of the great Black newspapers of that era, the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender, who would go down and write about how, the Blacks had gone and fought for their country in World War II, and now they're being treated as second-class citizens in what was called America's pastime. And Clemente was part of that early outspokenness. And eventually he said, when they travel, the white players would go into a restaurant and the black players would have to stay in the bus or the van and wait for people to bring them food. And they'd sleep at different places. And Clemente said, enough of this. And he organized the blacks on the Pittsburgh Pirates to at least get their own car and travel by themselves so they could go where they wanted to go.
Right.
So he and Hank Aaron of the Braves, Billy Bruton of the Braves, several of the players who trained down in that part of Florida started to really protest the way they were being treated.
Wow. Hey, so I'm really interested in the winter leagues. Once I was on a plane coming back from Dominican, and Alfonso Soriano was on the plane, and I said, "Hey, how come you're not playing in the winter leagues?" And he said, "Yankees won't let me." Clemente, I mean, the grind of a major league season, and then you go play in the winter leagues. What was the dedication that led to that?
Well, first of all, Soriano was getting paid how many umpteen millions of dollars?
He was young
right?
then. He was young then.
But it's still getting money compared to what they were getting in the 50s
Okay.
and 60s. So players in that era, even if they didn't go play in the winter leagues, they had other jobs in the winter, right? So it was a somewhat different sensibility of ball players. Secondly, Clemente just loved to play baseball. And third, and probably after he became, after 1960,
right,
there was a great expectation. Puerto Rico was waiting for him.
Wow.
He was their hero. He had to play. Sometimes he probably didn't really want to, but there was such a great expectation that the great Roberto is coming home and he's our star, that he sort of felt compelled to play. Not that he complained about it too much, but he had no choice really in that sense.
Must have been a grind.
Compared to the players of later, yeah.
So, okay, so he's obviously the complete player. He can run, he can hit, he can throw. He's an all-star in 13 seasons. He wins 4 National League batting titles, 12 consecutive Gold Gloves. He's the MVP in 66. He's the MVP of the 71 World Series. But beyond the numbers, beyond the awards, could you share a few moments of on the field that best capture the essence of Clemente, the ball player?
Clemente, I say in the book, and I believe deeply, baseball is sort of the sport that's built on statistics, and that's fine. But why do you watch it? You don't watch it for statistics, you watch it for its art. Right. Clemente was art. So everything about him riveted your eyes. Whether it was the way he walked to the plate, rolling his neck, and the way he would swing at anything, and if it was within hitting distance, he'd hit it. Ferguson Jenkins, the great pitcher for the Cubs, told me, there were 2, this is a joke, he said there were 2 left-handed hitters that scared the hell out of me. One was Willie McCovey and the other was Roberto Clemente, because he did line drives down the first baseline. And then, of course, his arm from right field. I think probably the play that sticks out in most people's memories is one where the guy was called safe. It was in the 71 World Series, a hit to deep right field. And I think it was Merv Rettenman tagging up at second and going to third. And Clemente uncorked this incredible throw that a lot of people say had him out. But just the throw from deep right field to third base or deep right field to home plate, in my opinion, is one of the most artistic parts of baseball. Really more fun to watch than a home run, which is just a ball going over, the wall. And so I think that, I can't tell you how many people I met after my book came out who would say, I was at Wrigley Field, or I was at Shea Stadium, or I was at Three Rivers, or, any of the parks in the National League, Chavez Ravine. And I saw Clemente go deep to the wall at right field and make this rope throw to third base. That's what people remember.
Wow, that is great. So I've always thought there was something mystical about the 3,000th hit. Can you tell us that story?
Well, it was 1972. It was the season after his great performance in the World Series, which he basically put the Pirates on his back and carried them to that
Beat my Orioles.
Over your Orioles, yes. No Oriole fan could forget Clemente
No.
from that. But anyway, so the next year, the last game he played in the 1972 season, John Matlack on the mound for the Mets. Clemente hits a rope to left center. It's a double. Photographers take this picture of him standing on second base, looking incredibly regal, royal. And it's his 3,000th hit. And it's the last hit in a regular season game that he ever got, because that winter he died in the plane crash.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the subtitle of your book is The Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero. So talk more about what was so special about him and why we're so interested in him so many years later.
Well, let's start with that last word first.
Right.
You know, hero is incredibly overused in sports, and I understand that. And I was even sort of a little bit reluctant to use it in this subtitle. But if you're ever going to apply it to someone for their deeds as a human being, it applies to Clemente. The way he lived and the way he died, delivering humanitarian aid to Nicaragua after a plane crash. So that was a heroic act. And he did it after he'd been the manager of a Puerto Rican team in the Caribbean World Series. He was held in Nicaragua. He loved the people down there. A couple months later, the earthquake ravages Managua and much of Nicaragua. Clemente starts organizing aid, and then hears that the strongman of Nicaragua, Anastasio Somoza, is actually hoarding the aid, misapplying it. So Clemente said, if I go, it'll get to the people. That's what led him on to this tragic plane that crashed. Passion and grace. You see the passion in the way he played and the way he lived. He had a saying that if you have a chance to help other people and fail to do so, you're wasting your time on this earth. He lived in a rush, with that passion. He played the same way, the way he ran. Everything about him on the field was passionate. And there was also a grace both in his aura, in his meaning, and in his look. So I think that's why those three words apply to him in a way that I think is meaningful and not just words.
So if you don't make a difference, you're wasting your time on this earth. A lot of people can say that. He lived it.
He really did. In the way he, he took his role seriously. In Puerto Rico, he thought about the way he came up and wanted to help kids in Puerto Rico, and tried to start a sports city, which was just getting underway when he tragically died, to not just help kids play baseball, but also in education. Wherever he went on the road, he loved children, anybody who was vulnerable in any way, old people, kids, poor people. He was immediately attracted to them. And there was no one standing between him and the public. There were no handlers or anybody. He just went out there. When, when he was in Nicaragua for that World Series, the person who went with him, Osvaldo Gil, told me that Clemente would go down to the front desk at the hotel and get a bunch of change, and then walk out into the streets of Nicaragua looking for people to give his money to. In Puerto Rico, he'd love to travel into the hills and meet the regular people up there and talk to them. And everything about him, not just his final effort to help Nicaragua, but his entire life was sort of shaped around that notion of being a man of the people.
Where did that come from?
It was innate. I couldn't say that it came from his parents necessarily. Certainly his mother had some of that sensibility. His father worked very hard and was more focused on just feeding the family. But some people just have that. Where does any of the magic of Clemente come from, or
Right.
somebody that you really admire? You can't transfer it to someone else. Certainly hard work is part of it, for the talent part. But some of it is just innate, and it was born in Roberto.
Yeah, I mean, who leaves his family on New Year's Eve to get on a plane to help
Yeah,
other people?
right. That was Clemente.
So then the Hall of Fame waives the 5-year rule. Tell us about that. How often did that happen?
Well, it happened once before with Lou Gehrig, and Clemente was the second, and well deserved. And there was no debate about it, both among the Pirates, among the Hall of Fame voters, the sports writers, which is interesting because Clemente's relationship with sports writers over his 18-year career was contentious, to be polite. He was always pissed off at them. Either they were quoting him in pidgin English and he thought making him sound unintelligent when he knew more English than they knew Spanish. And they were always, he had to overcome the stereotype of the quote unquote lazy Puerto Rican. He played more games than any Pirate in history. He was a perfectionist. He would talk about his ailments, but he kept playing. So all of that led to some contention until he died. And that's true of both sports writers and Pittsburgh itself. As soon as he died, he became a saint. Right. In life, sports writers would sometimes critique him. Fans, thought there were too many dark-skinned players on the Pirates and stopped going to games. But as soon as Clemente died, all of a sudden, he was heroic to everyone. He was the saint.
Right. So Air Bethesda Big Train proudly retired number 21 in 2009. Is in 2016 retired number 5 for Hank Greenberg. So we consider Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clemente and Hank Greenberg as baseball's 3 great barrier breakers. Major League Baseball has honored Clemente by giving its annual Roberto Clemente Award to the player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contributions to his team. So that's a great honor. But how in the heck can Major League Baseball not retire number 21?
Well, they should. I'm all for it. I think that there was an interesting reason why it didn't happen when Bud Selig was the commissioner. And I have a certain amount of sympathy for this. He thought, how can I do that for Roberto Clemente and not do it for Hank Aaron? Henry Aaron was Selig's guy.
Oh.
Maybe he should have done them both. Maybe it'll happen now that Selig's not around and baseball is in desperate shape and the Latino presence in baseball is, baseball couldn't exist without it, right? Without the Venezuelans, the Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, some Nicaraguans, Panamanians. They couldn't exist without that.
How would it be received?
I think I don't see how anybody could complain about it. One difference is Clemente wasn't the first Latino player. There were others before him. Hiram Bitorn, who was white but Puerto Rican. Luis Olmo played for the Dodgers. Vic Power, who I love, came up before Clemente. But Clemente was the guy. Yeah. He was the first one to make the Hall of Fame. He was the figure for Latino baseball for all of his career. I think baseball should retire his number, and I'm glad you did.
Well, we always try to be the pace setter.
Yes.
So my thanks to David Maraniss for giving us such a rich portrait of one of baseball's great barrier breakers. Thank you, David, so much, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Okay, Bruce, I loved it. Thanks for talking with me.
Thank you.
Hi fans, Alex Drain here from Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV. On last week's episode, we looked at game number 8 on our countdown, which was from 2009, and you can look at that on our YouTube channel. This Thursday at 7 p.m. we'll be unveiling game number 7 on our countdown, which took place in 2018, so keep your eye out for that, and we'll see you this Thursday at 7 p.m. for Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV.
Big Train fans, welcome to Safe at Home Tuesdays on BigTrain.tv. I'm Bruce Adams. I'm the founder and president of Bethesda Big Train Baseball. We're going to continue our conversation about the great humanitarian Roberto Clemente. We're lucky to have Duane Rieder as our guest. Duane is the founder and the executive director of the Clemente Museum. Duane, Pittsburgh is such a wonderful place to visit, especially for baseball fans. I mean, PNC Park is fantastic. The magnificent Clemente Bridge, the Warhol Museum, the History Center, the scenic vistas from Mount Washington, and the remains of the legendary Forbes Field. So, Duane, thank you for your extraordinary contribution in founding and sustaining the Clemente Museum. It's just fantastic. Could you introduce us to the jewel that you've created to honor Roberto Clemente?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, and this is an honor for me. And I was so glad, when you came here to the museum and we got to meet. And, I love spreading the word of Roberto Clemente, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. I'm the lucky guy to do a calendar through my photography business. I'm a commercial photographer, and I get to meet Vera Clemente, his widow, and the Clemente boys, and do this calendar project in 1995 when we are going to unveil the Clemente statue at the All-Star game at Three River Stadium. So for me, it was this big honor to be a part of this project, and I get to meet Vera, and I get to go to Puerto Rico and start becoming friends with her, and I start helping her with photographs because that's the only thing I'm good at. And I thought, I can at least help you with your photos because in Puerto Rico, everything unfortunately gets wet and moldy. And so all her photos were getting destroyed, and she asked me to fix some photos from her wedding and a few of the photos of her in the White House with Richard Nixon, Willie Stargell, and Manny Sangui, and getting the Citizens Medal on Roberto's behalf. And so I get to, start working on these photos, and I thought, hey, I can help this lady a little bit, and we can become friends. And that's way back in 1994. I spent 10 years building a photo archive, just to, like I say, just to become friends with her. And then I learned the stories, the real backstory of Roberto Clemente. I mean, most people know how he died in a plane crash on New Year's Eve, helping earthquake victims that were in Nicaragua. But the way he died is the way he lived. He spent every moment. If he wasn't playing baseball, he was trying to help children. He was trying to help the needy, the poor. The stories just go on and on and on. And so I kind of a little bit like to help people myself. And so I was like, I want to be like Roberto, and I want to keep his legacy. I want to keep his story, going. And so 10 years of building an archive of photos, she comes here in 2006 in June and asked if I would host the Clemente family party for the All-Star game now in our new PNC Park. And so I was like, wow, you mean like all your people would come to my photography studio?
That's
and
cool.
She was like, yeah. I was like, Orlando Cepeda and Juan Marichal. I saw some of the people on the invite list. I'm like, wow, I get to meet them in my photography studio. But I said to her, the first floor now, it's just my photography studio. There's nothing Clemente. It's only upstairs on the second floor. And she said, well, that's okay. We'll do the food and the wine and the dancing on the first floor. And I went, wait a minute, there's going to be dancing? I said, I'm in. So she flew home to Puerto Rico for a month while I prepped for the party. I moved my photography studio out of the first floor and transformed that first floor that you saw on our tour in a month, in 30 days. And when she came back for the party, they came the night before the party, 30 Clementes for a family reunion. And they were all like, Duane, it's like a museum here. And I was like, whoa, a museum versus a photo archive, a big difference. And so the day after the Clemente party, I just decided to give Clemente tours. And I started telling the stories that I've learned from Vera and Phil Dorsey and Les Banos and Elsa Coulong, all his best friends, then trusted me because Vera did. And so that's how it started.
Wow, that's fantastic. We can't go through all the floors of the fabulous museum you created. What are a few of your prize items in the museum?
Well, I have a favorite, and then I have, and then there's a couple things that are like the like the big ticket item, the biggest thing in this building. I'm actually holding it right now.
Whoa.
It's his Silver Slugger Award from 1961. He bats .351. 61 is his breakout year. He's angry in 1960 that he's not considered for the MVP. He's totally, the writers were lobbying against him, and they said, don't vote for Roberto because he's a gold bricker, a malingerer, a hypochondriac, and all this stuff. And he was really cranky about that. And so he thought, in 61, I'm going to show you that I'm the best player in the National League. And he wins his first silver bat, his first gold glove. He's the MVP of the All-Star game. He plays all 10 innings, and they give him a ring for that. And he dies with that ring on his finger. He never wore the 60 World Series ring, and he never wore the 71 World Series ring. So the 61 year for him, so to have this, slugger from 61. And the cool thing about this is, and I know the Clemente boys are going to get a little sad when they hear your story, is it's got dents in it. It's got about 4 or 5 dents, and I don't know if you're catching them with the light reflection, but the Clemente boys hit baseballs with this in the backyard.
That makes it better.
Yeah, it's the greatest story probably in this museum. And they were like, well, it's kind of embarrassing. I'm like, no, you were 8 or 10 years old. It's the cutest. I would have done the same. You would have done the same. All your players would do. You'd sneak this out and try to hit it. You would.
Absolutely. But
right?
You're not letting that happen anymore. What else you got there in that fabulous museum?
Well, we have 4 gold gloves. We have several uniforms. We've got a beautiful glove. We have a glove from around 1970 of his, a Rawlings game use glove, which is probably one of the rarest things. Probably about 8 different game use bats of all different types. And the most important one is the Moman bat, which Moman was his nickname, and he had it burned in the bat from 1955 through 1960 until in 61. Then he goes to the knobless U1 bat, and he goes to Roberto. So to have a Moment here, I have his rookie bat from 1955, valued at about $200,000 for that bat because it's so rare. Photos, documents. I mean, we probably have 500 photos framed on the wall. I have all kinds of contracts and leases from his apartments and letters and, personal things like I have a Eastern Airlines plane ticket. I have his ownership card for his racehorse named Champion Batter that the Galbraith family got him because they had a horse named Roberto that was winning all these races in 1967, and they made about $500,000 on the horse. And so they bought him a horse and sent it to Puerto Rico, and he named it Champion Batter. So I have the ownership card for the horse. So I have this.
What's with the jacket? What's with that crazy jacket behind you?
Oh, the jacket is the best of the best. So that popped up in the Miami All-Star game. It was for sale, and we had to buy it because it's the coolest suit in the planet. And Franco Harris, the great Pittsburgh Steeler, he helped us acquire the suit. And then the Cubs come here after winning the World Series, and they were all taking pictures with it. And I saw Javi Baez kind of get close to it, and he wanted a photo of just him in the suit, and he got a little emotional. And so I actually took the suit off the mannequin, the jacket, and I put it on him. And then he got very emotional. Well, after that, after he gets some of the Clemente mojo on him, he went on a hitting tear, and he was batting like 500 since he touched the suit. And so ESPN called me and said, hey, when did you let him wear that suit? And I tell them the whole story, and they look it up, and they're like, we want to do a story at the All-Star game about him and that suit. Would you let us borrow it? So I said yes, and we took it down to Washington, D.C., and they put it on him in batting practice, and the Topps baseball card photographer took photos of him wearing it, and it's his baseball card. So we got all kinds of plugging because of him wearing that suit.
That's
so
incredible.
Cool.
Now,
cool.
Something I have not seen, there's a relatively new mural out on the outside of the building. Could you tell us how that happened and what that's about?
Yeah, we've been wanting to do a mural on the side of this building. I own, so the museum is in a firehouse, a historic firehouse that was built in 1896, and I own it, but attached to it is another like storefront building with an apartment upstairs where I live, and it has a big giant brick wall. And we always wanted to do a big banner, mural, something to Roberto, because so many people pass our building by and go, we don't know where that firehouse is. And we're like, okay, players would come with the team bus and are driving around this neighborhood looking for this building. And so I thought, we got to put like the beacon of light. We got to put something out there. So when people see Clemente, they know to park. So we wanted to come up with something that was just like, you know, like gripping. And so we picked the perfect portrait. We designed it all out. We partnered up with a muralist named Kyle Holbrook. He's born in Pittsburgh, but lives in Miami, and he paints murals all over the world.
Wow.
We partnered up with him. We started on the mural, and then we wanted to add the quote about, you know, if you're not doing, you know, while you're here on earth, if you're not making a change, if you're not making something better, you're wasting your time. You know, so we put that quote on the side of the building. And then everybody wants to take their photograph with something here as like a marker. And so we painted a little Clemente tip in the cap for the 3000th hit, kind of a life-size version in the corner, so that the players and everybody could take their picture with it.
That's great.
So we get a lot of hype over the mural.
That is fantastic. Well, I can't wait to get back to see that. So it is a beautiful building with a great red brick wall and everything. This is your photography office, but also I got a bottle with 21 on it. I picked up. It's a nice item there. Now, how can people help support the museum? Tell us about the wine.
So I'm a winemaker, and I happen to do it more so to put my photographs on the wine labels to send them out as promo to get hired for photography. Yeah. And people started liking the wine. And so I got a license in 2009, shortly after opening the museum and becoming a nonprofit. So the museum's a 501c3. It can't own a liquor license, but my winery company is called Engine House 25, which is the building. And we actually sell Clemente wines here, but we sell barrels of wine to celebrities, baseball players. We have 30 baseball players in our club. We have 4 Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam is in our club, big baseball wine guy. So you can buy a barrel of wine, help support the museum, get yourself 200 bottles of wine with your label on them that I can either take the picture or you could submit photos. So that's a neat little connection. But if you just want to buy a bottle of wine, you can go to enginehouse25wines.com or Clemente Museum. It's all linked together. And you can see the wines. You can buy a shirt, buy a hat, buy a sticker, anything right now to help, support the museum, because we're not getting a lot of visitors with COVID-19 going on. Right. It's been pretty quiet. But we got the lights on here. We're keeping everything polished, especially the bat, get nice and shiny. And we're just trying to keep it going. And thank God for people like you that want to talk about this place and help us keep it going.
We got to keep it going. It's just fantastic. Yeah. Well, like everybody else, I'm dazzled by Clemente, the ball player, but really what inspires me the most is Clemente, the humanitarian. I want to read that quote you were talking about. Yeah. If you have a chance to accomplish something that will make things better for people coming behind you, and you don't do that, you are wasting your time on this earth. So that's why Air Bethesda Big Train retired number 21 in 2009. We also retired number 5 in honor of Hank Greenberg. So we think that Hank Greenberg, Jackie Robinson, and Roberto Clemente are baseball's 3 great barrier breakers. So Duane, Major League Baseball has honored Clemente by giving the annual Roberto Clemente Award to the player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contribution to his team. That's really great. But how is it that Major League Baseball has not yet retired number 21?
I think it's because they want to keep Jackie kind of isolated and be the only one to make it, maybe it's a little more prestigious at that point, but I think making 2 numbers, 21 is half of 42. They kind of overlapped their career by a few years. They had respect for each other. I know Jackie would want to retire 21. I know we would, because Roberto, we want to retire 21 because Roberto dies helping people, not because he gets 3,000 hits exactly, which is kind of almost perfect, that he's a first in many categories for Latinos. And right now there's a lot of Latinos playing baseball. Now would be a great time. Baseball needs a little bump. Let's retire 21, and have just those two numbers. No, we're not going to then retire number 3 for Babe Ruth and 7 for Mickey Mantle. And, those guys didn't die helping people. Roberto Clemente gave every moment of his life, if he wasn't playing baseball, to helping people. He was going to Children's Hospital and telling them, please don't tell anyone. I don't want the media to come here. I'll keep doing this, but if the media shows up, I won't come back. He was doing that at Pittsburgh Center for the Blind. He was going and working with the blind kids all the time. They kept it a secret his whole career. He was doing so many things, giving clinics to kids to teach them how to play baseball and how to be better human beings. And, there was just so much that he was doing that inspires us today. And we hope the museum will inspire all the young kids that are coming here to see and hear about Roberto Clemente.
Well, I can assure everybody that the 21 looks really great with a 42 because we got it on our outfield wall. It looks fine. So I've got a plan I want to share with you here.
Okay.
So I was hoping this year, our season got shut down by the COVID, so we'll do this next year. But we're going to have a Roberto Clemente Community Service Day. We're going to take all our players. We're going to put them in a green shirt with Big Train is the name of our team in Spanish. We're going to put 21 on the back. We're going to send them and our fans, and we're going to do several hours of community service at 5 or 6 nonprofits around the county during the day. And then at night, we're going to have a Latin American baseball heritage night. And so we'll have the mariachi band, we'll have the 21 on the wall, we'll have the pupusas, and we're gonna have these players play in the jersey with the 21 on the back. So I'm counting on you next June or July to be with us and helping
us. We'll come down. I'll come down. I'll throw out a pitch, or I'll be a part. I'll bring some Clemente stuff down. We could do a little exhibit. How about that?
Yeah, no, we're in. That is totally what we want to do. We want to get people to understand this, and we want this to be a model. Not just do it at a little ballpark in Bethesda, Maryland, but let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's have Roberto Clemente Community Service Day all over the country in a year or two.
Okay, and if you do it on a day, if you pick an off day for the Washington Nationals, we'll get Ryan Zimmerman to come be with us, because his mom came here. She's a quadriplegic, and she couldn't go upstairs. The Silver Bat lives on the 2nd floor, and we don't have an elevator yet. And her and her husband, we went upstairs, and I got the bat, and I put it on his mom, and she said, rub it on me. And when I go home, I'm going to rub Ryan and give him the Clemente Mojo so they go to the World Series and win the World Series. And look what happens. And Ryan was almost the MVP, right? So his mom, who was a Pittsburgher, came here because she loved Clemente and Stargell and all those guys, rubbed the silver bat on her and gave Ryan the mojo. And so he is a Clemente Award person. I don't think he received the Clemente Award, but he should this year, because they do so much, the Zims Foundation for MS, and so we could get Ryan to show up. If you pick a day to retire 21, I'll get him to come with us. And
all right. Well, that's terrific. So my thanks to Duane Rieder for honoring the memory of one of baseball's greatest barrier breakers and greatest humanitarians, and for being with us today on Safe at Home Tuesdays on BigTrain.tv. Duane, thank you so much for what you do. I really value it.
Thank you. And keep spreading the love of 21.
Absolutely. And let's get it retired by Major League Baseball.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Duane. Welcome back. This summer, we were planning on honoring 5 Big Train community heroes out at Povich Field. And we're not able to do that because of the COVID, but we're going to do that in the 2021 season. But Big Train fans, we're bringing these community heroes to you on BigTrain.tv. So I'm really pleased to welcome Teresa Rios Wright, who's not just a Big Train community hero, but she's one of my personal heroes. So, hola, Teresa.
Hola, amigo Bruce. ¿Cómo estás?
Tell us about the Dreamers. I'm so excited about the Dreamers.
Well, it's like the word says, dreamers. We are so excited about it. And because you see, we've been working with our children to be dreamers and to be successful. And they went to college and they are working. There's a lot of students, and they are working in the health system. There's a lot of dreamers that are working in the hospital with the COVID patients and everything.
Right.
So it was very important for them to continue this program. So we are celebrating every single day and hoping that it will continue like that.
And they must be calling you, and they must be
Yes,
so excited.
my phone is being off the hook, and we just, celebrate on the phone, and we have Zoom talks too in the phone with my dreamers. And the nicest thing too is their parents are calling me too, because you see, the parents are very happy about it, because many of the parents are undocumented, but they're very happy because the children have a chance.
We are all so happy. So Teresa, you're a fabulous career in helping these dreamers and helping these kids over all these years, and your work at Identity. So would you tell us about Identity and how you got involved with that wonderful organization?
Well, like you said, I was working in the school system, and of course there was a lot of students that were coming from Central America, and they were immigrants. And I was working in the high school trying to help those children, but there were many things that we didn't know how to do, how to help them, how to help their families, how to get a lawyer, how to do. So it was a very, very difficult time to do it. And one day I was in the dining room at the cafeteria at Gatesville High School with one of my teenagers crying because, he didn't have a home, and he was, imagine to me with a teenager crying, and said, I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden my phone rang, and it was Candace from Identity. And because they had a program in DC, and she says, Teresa, this is Candace, and we have a program for kids in DC. And I said, but Candace, I'm not going to send my kids to DC. How come we're going to send them there? And she said, can you listen to me? And I said, okay, Candace, I listen. If you get me a school and 25 kids, we go to you, to Montgomery County. I said, really? I said, hang up. And I ran to the principal, Mr. Bedford at Gatesville High School. We got on the phone, and in 5 minutes, Identity was born at Gatesville High School. So when they came, Bruce, they asked me for 25 kids. So how many kids do you think I had?
125.
I had 65. And, she laughed because she says, what are we going to? So from then on, Bruce, and they were there, and with those 65 kids, and we worked that year. And then they thought that instead of being in DC, they should be in Montgomery County.
Right.
So then we looked for a house, and we have a pink house there that they bought a house, and now that's where Identity was born. And they have been there ever since. This is a blessing for us in Montgomery County, because they are doing a tremendous job, not only with the kids in the high school, but now they are involved in the middle and in the elementary school. And also another good thing about Identity is not only they work with the students, they work with the families. Because you see, the families, they need help.
Absolutely.
The families, the students, we help them at school the best we can. But some of the parents, they don't know what to do. They don't know English. So Identity is fabulous because they don't only have the program for the kids, they have a program for the parents. And now they have classes for parents and leadership training.
Right.
So it's very nice because now I'm working with the parents of those kids, to do things together. How could we help our community? Because it's very nice to have kids, the parents that could go to another parent and says, hey, when you could work with us, let's do this for our kids. You see, they're ambassadors to other parents. So they bring more people to the table. So that's very good, Bruce.
It is such a beautiful program, and that house is such an inspiring place to be. Tell us about what's happening with the COVID. How is Identity helping the kids and the families?
Well, COVID, like I said, has been affecting all of us. So I see that, all of them, my daughter Karen, Diego, and everybody there on the phone all the time. And they have classes for the parents, on the computer, and lots of things in the computer to help the parents. And they are collecting money. This is very important because they are sending money for food and for rent, because, that's a big problem for our community and for everybody. So they have food distribution, but also they are helping the parents with the checks for the different expenses that they have, like the rent. So now what we're trying to do is ask people to donate to Identity so they can continue their work.
And so how can people contribute to Identity?
Well, they can go to the website.
Yep.
And in the website, they can contribute to the website and send whatever money they want to send, the contribution. And that's the important thing to do.
Would you share the website with us?
The website, let me give you the website here. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Okay, it's identity-youth.org.
So identity.youth.org.
That's it.
That's
And then you
fantastic.
that's just send your contribution there, but it's very important because they are helping a lot of the they are helping a lot of the families with the things that they need, and also the students.
Yeah.
You know, and another thing that Identity is doing that I'm working with them, you know, the kids that have been accepted to college, you know, we work together to see how they can, because right now it's very hard. Of course, we work with a lot of kids that go to Montgomery College.
Right.
Because you see, our kids is easier because they cannot pay room and board and stuff. But Identity is helping us, you know, to help them to continue to fill out the forms and everything and get ready to submit everything to Montgomery College.
Right. Well, Teresa, you're such a wonderful spokesperson for Identity. We're so grateful to honor you as a Big Train community hero. So thanks for being with us today. Teresa Rios.
Well, Bruce,
Right.
thank you very much. And as I said to you, it has been an honor and a pleasure to work with you so many years. Thank you very
We've been
much.
at this for 35 years together, I think.
That's right, Bruce, because I had, yes, Bruce, I'm almost going to be in tears because I remember going to your office 35 years ago.
Well,
So I hope we can continue working together.
we got some more years together for sure.
Is that okay?
So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for helping the dreamers. Thank you for bringing Identity, helping to bring Identity to Montgomery County, and all you do. So Teresa Rios Wright is a Big Train community hero. So thank you.
And I can say gracias, Bruce.
Gracias. Thanks for watching, Big Train fans. We'll be back next Tuesday, July 7th, with a show on the summer college leagues in Washington and Baltimore that had just a tremendous record of winning national championships and sending players to the major leagues. So if you get a chance, go to www.bigtrain.org and send us a little money so we can bring the fun back to Povich Field in 2021. So see you next Tuesday, July 7th. Thank you.